In this video, we're going to look at how you would document your sources when we're doing career journals or any type of research. First of all, why do we document sources? I think by now many of you would know the answer to this, but we document this for several different reasons. One reason is because we want to be able to give our reader a source of information if they wanted more information that they could go to. We also want to make sure that we are giving reliable sources. There's a huge difference when you go to educational or government websites versus, let's say, the National Enquirer. So we want to keep our websites reliable, and so by citing our sources, that just keeps everyone honest there. We also want to give recognition and credit to the original author. Now, we do not use the MLA format in science. We will be using the American Psychological Association. So if you've ever heard of the APA format, that is what we'll be using in here. They are who determine the acceptable guidelines for publishing scientific articles, scientific books, and websites. There's also a manual that goes through the ins and outs of how to follow their particular format. We're just going to kind of touch on the surface of how we would document websites especially. Where are your sources listed? There are two different places that I would be able to find information regarding your sources. First of all, within your actual report. So we call that an in-text citation. Whenever you are at the end of a paragraph, you would want to cite information, cite this at the end of the paragraph. But if you are doing any specific statistics or facts, anything that's not considered just general knowledge, so specific information. Also, if you're doing any direct quotes, then after you're done writing your particular thing, especially if it's a direct quote from a particular article, then you would want to do what we call an in-text citation. And so that's going to be within your actual paragraph or at the very end of the paragraph. The end of the document report, this is what you're familiar with in English class called like a works cited page. So this would be where you are going to fully cite the source. This is where you're going to give the publication date, the full URL address, and those things. So in-text citations in a report or any other written document, you always want to put your in-text citation immediately after your information, and you are going to just list the name of the author, and if they give a publication year, you'd want to put that year as well. Now there are times where they don't always have an author, so if there's no author listed, you would use the name of the organization, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So let's say that we're using a certain statistic, so it's not just common knowledge. So in this particular short excerpt of a paragraph, they're saying that of 60 screening tests evaluated, only 29 are recommended for use by physicians. So that's not just common knowledge, that's pretty specific. So at the very end of that sentence, they are stating where that information can be found. If you wanted to check their facts or you wanted more information about that particular statistic, you would put the name of the author, comma, and followed by the year that was published. Now, if there is no author, a specific person author, let's say that it's written by an organization like the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, then you would include that as the author or in place of the author. And if there's a year, you would put the year it was published. You're going to run across many websites where there's not always a year that it was published, so it's perfectly fine if you were to end up finding one without a year, but it was still a good website, that you could just put the name of the author or the name of the organization and then end your parenthesis, and that would be it. And that's okay if there is no year given in your website. End of document citations are a little bit longer, and you're definitely going to want to look at the documentation protocol handout, and this will go in your binder. You'll want to list all of your documentation alphabetically. So if you ever have two or more, you want to make sure you're putting them in alphabetical order. Make sure that if the entry takes more than one line that you single space, and if you have two entries, you want to double space between your entries, not between the same entry, but from one entry to the next, make sure you double space, and then always check your punctuation and your capitalization. So we normally don't have very many books being cited. The majority of the things that we're going to be doing are your internet web pages. So with an internet web page, I want you to notice that the first thing that gets listed, and this is all of this right here, that is, in this case, the name of the organization, because there was no specific author. So your organization comes first. Notice there's a period at the end of that, followed by the parentheses where you're going to get your published date. Now this is not the copyright date. This is if it gives you a date when it was published. Notice there's a period after that. Next, you would find the title of the article. So in this case, the title of the article from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services was Managing Asthma, a Guide for Schools. And there's a period that goes after that. And then retrieved from, and then you copy and paste your full entire URL address. Their journals, sometimes you do get some online journals, so this would be one that you might be using. An online journal is going to include the page number and things like that, so it might include, what version of the article it is, and then you would list the pages that you found your information. So occasionally that's one that scientists will, or not only scientists, but students in this class will find online journals. So I wanted to give you an example of one that I did. This is from a teacher career journal that I put together. So this is a website that I found. Educationportal.com is a very commonly used site for students when they're doing career journals. And when you look through this, what I would want you to notice is that there is no author listed. So usually the author will be listed up by the title, or if you can't find it up by the title, usually at the very end of the article they would say by, so-and-so. In this case, they don't. Education Portal does not have a specific author listed, so that means that the author by default becomes the name of the organization. So Education Portal is our author. We also said that we needed to have a published date. Now this is where students run into trouble. They'll come all the way to the bottom and they'll notice this copyright date down here, the 2003 to 2014. Your published date should just be that, the year it was published. This is a 11-year time span. That's not when it was published, that's the copyright the Education Portal has. Nobody can steal their name, Education Portal. It's copyrighted. So you don't want to use the copyright date. That is going to be inaccurate. After you have a published date, and if there is no published date, you would just put N period D period for no date in the parentheses instead of a year. You want the name of the article. You're going to find that up at the top, so Educational Requirements for Becoming a Teacher. And then the URL address. So you would copy the URL address and paste that into your PowerPoint or into your Word document. So this is what my Education Portal website ends up looking like. I've got the name of the organization because there was no author. I have N.D. And notice I put periods behind each of those. When it comes to your title, even though the title may be capitalized in the article, when you're doing the APA style, you capitalize the first letter. Notice the rest of it's all lowercase. And then you put a period there and retrieved from, and I have my URL address. Now I just want to take a quick look at the second one because this one does have a title, or excuse me, an author. So you notice again up toward the top it has who wrote this, Melissa Kelly. And when we are writing documentation and there is an author, you want to make sure that you are including their last name first, comma, and then their first initial only. So you would not put Melissa, just Kelly, comma, M for Melissa Kelly. If you were writing a paragraph and you wanted to put, Melissa Kelly, you wanted to use her at the end of your paragraph. So you were writing about the responsibilities of the teacher. At the end of the paragraph, you would finish your sentence and then you would put Kelly in your parenthesis. So if there was a year, then you would just put the last name followed by, whatever the year is. If there is no year, then it's just the name of the author with no year behind it. Same with Education Portal. At the end of your paragraph, you would put Education Portal as your author since there was no specific person listed, and in parentheses because there's no published year for that one either. So I hope that was a quick overview, but hopefully that was helpful to kind of get you looking for specific things as you're doing your research for your different career journals throughout the class.